This is not a dune set. This is a very real desert in Niger. Jado was probably built by the nomadic Sao people and is filled with ksars, which are fortified houses made of salt and clay, with giant walls and secret passages. Located deep in the desert, it was once a vital stop for trans-Saharan caravans, but is now a hotspot for smugglers and bandits. The site has been off-limits since 2002 due to its dangers. The origin of the ksars remain a mystery. No archaeological studies have been conducted, leaving many questions unanswered. Even today, shifting sands reveal and conceal parts of these ancient ruins, fueling local speculation about what might still be hidden beneath the desert. Speaking of connective tunnels, scientists were blown away by the discovery of lava tubes in Saudi Arabia. These underground passages form when molten lava cools down. Researchers believe that ancient nomadic groups may have utilized these tunnels to survive the super harsh desert climates. While excavating the tunnels, archaeologists uncovered artifacts, rock art, and skeletal remains. The art and animal bones show that the people who used the tunnels were probably sheep and goat herders. They're still piecing together whether these groups lived in the tunnels for extended periods or just used them as temporary shelters. The Great Pyramid of Giza has been standing for thousands of years, but it's still hiding secrets. Using special scanning technology, scientists found two hidden structures under an ancient burial ground. The first is a shallow L-shaped structure, and below it is a much larger space that could be a final resting place or a chamber. The smaller structure was filled with sand on purpose, while the deeper one might be an empty chamber. Experts believe the two are connected, possibly as an entrance leading to a secret chamber. This is big news because it might give us some more insight into who built the pyramids and why. The world is full of ancient writing, but some messages refuse to give up their secrets, like the mystery of the Bashplemi tablet. This unusual stone, pulled from a lake in Georgia, is covered in symbols no one can read. Even with modern technology, experts are completely stumped. The tablet is about the size of a book, with 60 symbols carefully carved into its surface, but 39 of them don't match any known language. Some resemble scripts from ancient civilizations in the Middle East, India, and Egypt, but none are an exact match. To make things even trickier, part of the tablet is broken off, meaning a piece of the puzzle is missing forever. To rule out a hoax, scientists studied the tablet closely. They confirmed it's made of vesicular basalt, an extremely tough local rock. Whoever carved these symbols must have been really skilled. Based on similar archaeological finds, experts believe the tablet could date back thousands of years, possibly to the late Bronze or early Iron Age. Some symbols repeat, which could mean they're numbers. Maybe it's an inventory list, a record of battles, or even an offering to the deities. Until someone cracks the code, the Bashplemi tablet remains an unsolved mystery from the depths of history. Experts are still stumped with what this Minoan disc might mean. The Phaistos disc is one of the most mysterious finds from the Minoan civilization. This 6-inch clay object, discovered in 1908, has strange spiral markings that no one has fully decoded yet. The disc has 241 symbols on both sides, showing everything from people and animals to tools and plants. Experts have come up with many theories about what the symbols mean. Some think it's an early form of Greek. Others suggest it's a prayer or a hymn. And some even believe it could be a letter from a king in Anatolia to a Greek ruler. Let's see who will be the first to figure this out. It's always a fun day at an archaeologist's office when they find something as big as a 2,000-year-old marble head. A French archaeologist mission went digging inside an old medieval house near Alexandria in Egypt and found a statue's head depicting an old, possibly ill man. This statue dates from the last Egyptian dynasty before it became part of the Roman Empire, and the site where it was found is associated with the likes of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. For archaeologists, even the smallest finds at this site means a lot. You've heard of Lucy, right? The Australopithecus that was an early ancestor for us humans. Well, scientists found some of her species' footprints somewhere in Tanzania. The so-called Laetoli footprints are over 3 million years old. The trail stretched 88 feet and has about 70 footprints, left behind when a bunch of early humans walked across some wet volcanic ash. What's cool is that these early humans were already walking on 2 feet, like us, not all hunched over like apes. The close spacing of the prints shows they probably had short legs and a shorter stride than we do today. In an ancient Egyptian temple, archaeologists uncovered a shrine unlike any other, a place dedicated to falcons and 2 mysterious deities. One deity had a falcon's head, while the other wore a crown with a sun disk and cow horns. But the most baffling discovery was an inscription that read, "It is improper to boil a head in here." At the heart of the shrine, there are 15 headless falcons carefully arranged on a pedestal, likely as offerings to the falcon-headed deity. One theory suggests the birds were boiled first, perhaps to pluck their feathers, before being placed in the shrine, following the strange rule carved into stone. Archaeologists also found a 13-inch iron harpoon nearby. Its true purpose remains unknown, although the shrine also held remains of fish, mammals, and bird eggs, suggesting that the rituals may have included feasting. And speaking of ancient Egypt, meet Hathor. Scientists named her after the ancient Egyptian deity of motherhood, music, and singing. This wooden statue, housed at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, was thought to be just a beautiful artifact, until a surprising secret was uncovered. Using an X-ray machine, experts found a mechanical operating system inside it, with pulleys and axles connecting her shoulder to her left leg. When activated, the system made her hand raise and lower, an engineering marvel from over 3,000 years ago. The statue was created during Egypt's Middle Kingdom, around 1800 BCE, and is often compared to 19th century automata due to its advanced design. It's believed the statue was used in religious ceremonies, symbolizing Hathor's role in dance and music. An unexpected discovery happened in northern Kuwait, where a Kuwaiti-Polish team uncovered a mysterious 7,500-year-old statue. The statue features an elongated skull, no mouth, narrow eyes, and a flattened nose. This feature is thought to be an Ophidian figurine, named after the Greek word for snake, and it was likely made by the Ubaid culture, a civilization known for their pottery skills. While no one knows exactly what role this weird statue played, it might have been linked to rituals or symbolic practices. Some scientists think these figurines, found in homes or final resting places, were tied to important cultural beliefs. We couldn't mention unresolved mysteries of this world without speaking about these elongated skulls. In the deserts of Peru, researchers uncovered 5 ancient skeletons, 2 with unnaturally elongated skulls. While head shaping was common in many cultures, these skulls defy explanation. Local legends tell tales of the so-called Gentiles, a mysterious race banished underground by the powerful deities. Some say this is what the skulls represent. Others think this is some type of genetic anomaly, which was confirmed after finding an infant skull, too large to be artificially shaped.
Most people know that pyramids were built as grand tombs for the pharaohs, designed to ensure they had a smooth journey to the afterlife. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was constructed for the pharaoh Khufu. But what most people don't know is that this whole pyramid building trend started right here with the step pyramid of Djoser about 4,700 years ago. This massive structure was built for Pharaoh Djoser, a ruler from Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It rises 7 layers high above the ground and stands about 200 feet tall. We think of it today as a phenomenal architectural project. But for ancient Egyptians, the Step Pyramid of Djoser turned out to be more like a massive experiment, a trial run, if you will, to perfect their building skills before they moved on to even more ambitious pyramids. Reaching new heights is super exciting, but the real mystery is what is going on below the ground. In this pyramid's underground labyrinth, there is a network of tunnels stretching about 3.5 miles long. And some researchers believe these tunnels might have been part of a sophisticated water system that could completely change what we think about pyramid construction. Let's talk about this massive complex located in Saqqara. Surrounding the pyramid, there's what's known as a dry moat, a continuous trench that is up to 164 feet wide and almost 2 miles long. It forms a sort of rectangular shape around the pyramid. This trench has an average depth of about 65 feet. Now, if you were to add up all the earth and rock they dug out to create this moat, it would be about 10 times the volume of the Step Pyramid itself. For the longest time, people just assumed this trench was nothing more than a huge quarry, a place where they dug up stone and clay to build the Step Pyramid. Makes sense, right? But when you take a closer look, it doesn't add up. The trench is too narrow and deep to be practical for mining, and its layout doesn't match anything we know about ancient Egyptian quarrying methods. Plus, some sections of the trench are actually covered with a rocky ceiling, which would have made it nearly impossible to use as a quarry. Another theory suggests that the dry moat had some kind of spiritual significance. Maybe it was a sacred place, where souls of nobles gathered to serve the late king in the afterlife. There are even niches in the walls that work as a hint at this spiritual function. But most researchers believe that this purpose likely developed much later, long after the complex was built for Djoser. So, what was the moat really designed for? In 2020, a researcher came up with a pretty intriguing idea. It is possible that this trench was actually designed to collect and manage water, especially after heavy rainfalls. Now, that makes sense when you consider the location. The moat sits in an area that could easily have been flooded by runoff water from nearby plains. This could also explain why the trench wasn't used for new graves until much later when the climate became drier and less prone to flooding. The story becomes even more intriguing as this trench appears to be part of a larger, more complex hydraulic system within the Djoser complex. It is like the trench has several compartments, carefully carved out of the rock and connected by tunnels. These compartments likely served as a part of a water treatment system, where water would flow from one compartment to the next, getting cleaner as it moved along. Now, here is where things start to tie into the pyramid itself. The Djoser complex has a series of underground shafts, and some researchers think that water from the moat's deep trench might have been used to power a hydraulic lift system, and this giant water-powered elevator could have been used to raise the heavy stones needed to build the pyramid. It worked like a volcano, but instead of lava, water did the heavy lifting. Imagine a big deep hole in the ground at the center of the pyramid site. Inside this hole, there was a huge wooden platform, kind of like a giant raft that could move up and down. When the workers wanted to lift a heavy stone, they would fill the hole with water. As the water rose, the wooden platform started to float up, carrying the stone with it, almost like a giant water-powered elevator. When the stone reached the right height, the workers slid it off the platform and onto the pyramid. The idea is that water from the deep trench, after being cleaned and filtered, would flow into these shafts. A massive float, possibly made of wood, would then rise as the water filled the shaft, lifting the stones up to where they were needed for construction. Once the stone was in place, they'd let the water out, lowering the platform back down to the bottom, ready to lift the next stone. This fancy hydraulic lift system could have been a game changer, making the whole building process a lot faster and more efficient without using a lot of workforce. It is like the ancient Egyptians were already embracing the whole idea of work smarter, not harder. But of course, not everyone is on board with this theory. Some experts argue that the area where the Step Pyramid of Djoser was built couldn't have held enough water from occasional rains to maintain such a fancy hydraulic system. The main theory suggests that, in the past, there might have been some kind of lake nearby that would have filled up after a period of rain, and this lake could have supplied water to the complex's hydraulic system. But there is no mention of such a lake in any ancient Egyptian writings, so it might be more of a what-if situation than a reality. And then there's the issue of the hard work itself. Remember when I said this method could have allowed the ancient builders to raise stones with far less effort? Well, that might not be entirely true. According to some experts, just building this hydraulic device would have required a lot more heavy work than simply moving the stone blocks using good old-fashioned manpower. And let's not forget, the Step Pyramid of Djoser is like a baby pyramid compared to those that came later. The stones used for Djoser's pyramid weighed, on average, about 660 pounds each, which is nothing compared to the more than 2.5-ton blocks used later for the Pyramid of Chephren. If this cool water lift theory gets completely ruled out, we still need to explain how this pyramid was built in the first place. To answer that, we need to rewind a bit and talk about the original plans. See, before Djoser's tomb became a pyramid, the idea was to construct a simple mastaba. This type of tomb was pretty common in earlier periods, a flat-roofed, rectangular structure with sloping sides. But after the original mastaba was finished, they decided to expand it a bit by adding more layers on top. And then they added even more layers, until the construction reached 6 distinctive steps, each one smaller than the previous. And they probably did all this by raising those heavy stones using ramps, not a water-powered elevator. There is still so much we don't know about the Step Pyramid of Djoser. More research is definitely needed to fully understand how this system worked, or if it even existed at all. But the idea of using water to help build the pyramid adds a whole new layer to our understanding of ancient Egyptian engineering. It's a powerful reminder of just how clever and resourceful those builders were, using the natural landscape and the power of water to create one of the most iconic monuments in history. Something strange is lurking beneath the sands of Giza, and scientists have no idea what it is. Archaeologists just found a hidden structure near the Great Pyramid using advanced ground scanning technology. What's inside? Nobody knows, but excavations are already underway. The Great Pyramid of Giza is one of the most famous monuments on Earth, but it doesn't stand alone. It's surrounded by an ancient necropolis, a massive royal graveyard filled with tombs and monuments. They belong to pharaohs, nobles, and other high-ranking officials. Most of these tombs are above the ground. They're called mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs built from limestone or mud brick, and they've been studied for decades. But from old movies, we know that these weren't simple graves. They have deep vertical shafts leading to underground burial chambers, where the past was sealed away for eternity. And recently, archaeologists found one curious empty space in the cemetery, a completely unexplored patch of ground. No mastabas, no visible ruins, nada. For years they ignored it, but between 2021 and 2023, they decided to investigate. They didn't dig though. Instead, they used a technology that kind of acts like X-rays for the ground. These radars let scientists see the secrets hidden there. And there was something hidden beneath the sand, something deliberately buried and forgotten. A 2-part underground structure. One part was shallow and L-shaped. It's about 33 feet long and buried just 6.5 feet deep. But below that, a deeper, more mysterious anomaly, a structure completely different from anything else in the area. They called it a highly resistive anomaly, which means it's dense and solid, likely made of stone, sand, or even metal. And still, no one has a clue what's inside it. Now, it's clear that humans made the L shape. It wasn't formed by nature. and the shallower structure might have been an entrance to whatever is hidden below. But they only have some theories about what might be hidden there. It's also filled with sand and gravel. It was probably deliberately backfilled after its construction, perhaps to preserve this. Why? Well, we don't know yet. The archaeological team will need to excavate to understand what exactly this thing was and why it was built. The first guess is a lost burial chamber. Many tombs in Giza have underground burial sites, but most have clear surface markers. This one, for some reason, has nothing, but it could be one of them. The second guess is an ancient offering chapel. Egyptologists know that some chapels were built in this shape, but usually they were above ground, not buried like this. And finally, it might be something we've never seen before. If this turns out to be a new type of structure, it could rewrite what we know about the burials of pharaohs. The only way to know for sure is to dig it up. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Excavations are already underway. Archaeologists are racing against time to uncover the truth. But there's a real danger there too. Giza's fragile ancient structures need to be handled carefully. Otherwise, they could be damaged beyond repair. So all we can do is wait for the truth. Now, these tombs always held fascinating mysteries. Unfortunately, we'll never learn tons of these mysteries because of some relentless tomb robbers. Egyptian tombs were built to guard the bodies for eternity. But that absolutely didn't stop people from breaking in and stealing everything valuable inside. They've been bothering these ancient sites for thousands of years, starting way back in Pharaoh's times. Many of the most famous tombs, including those in Giza, Saqqara, and the Valley of the Kings, were looted. It was a common practice in ancient Egypt. And they were serious about this whole thing. They dug secret tunnels to bypass traps and walls, bribed or threatened tomb workers to get inside knowledge, cracked open sarcophagi to grab gold, jewelry, and artifacts. And by the time modern archaeologists got to most of these tombs, they had already been picked clean. The reigning pharaohs got tired of this infuriating nonsense. The Valley of the Kings, the famous burial ground of Egyptian royalty, was supposed to be the ultimate safe zone. Tombs were built deep underground, hidden in the desert. Passages were sealed with giant stone blocks. False doors and traps were added to confuse thieves. Even curses were written on the walls, warnings of horrible endings for anyone who dared to disturb the tomb, which is exactly where we got all those horror stories about mummies from. Spoiler alert, none of it worked. Most tombs in the Valley of the Kings were fully robbed within 100 years of being sealed. Even King Tutankhamun's tomb, one of the most famous in history, was broken into twice in ancient times. Some of them decided to try and fight back. The New Kingdom rulers built hidden unmarked tombs in a way that should have prevented the looters from finding them, but didn't work. Some pharaohs, like Ramses II, were moved in secret to prevent their bodies from being stolen. Nope, didn't matter. The grave robbers always won. That's because tomb raiders weren't just random thieves. They were skilled, organized, and well-connected. They knew exactly where to look. Many were the ones who had built these sites in the first place, and they knew where the entrances were. If they couldn't smash through the doors, they'd dig through the walls, floors, and even ceilings to break inside. They also worked fast, often within a few years after the tombs were sealed, before anyone forgot where the valuable stuff was. The Khufu's pyramid, the one that's next to this newly discovered structure, was looted long before modern times. The one thing left inside when explorers got there? An empty granite box where the sarcophagus used to be. Unfortunately, it's not just about gold. History itself gets stolen during these raids. Ancient Egyptians wrote detailed records of what exactly and where they buried. So when archaeologists compare these lists to what's found, they can see what's missing, which is often everything valuable. Most artifacts don't end up in museums. They just disappear into private collections, where they can never be studied again. Which is, of course, completely unfair. In fact, a few countries have had enough and started passing laws to take historical artifacts back from private collectors. In Italy, if you own an ancient Roman artifact, you must prove you got it legally. China is actively hunting down stolen artifacts, and they must find ways to retrieve it back from the Western collectors. In Egypt, they passed new laws making it illegal for private citizens to own any ancient Egyptian artifacts at all. Other countries, like the US, the UK, Germany, or Switzerland, are completely fine with rich guys owning their history. The British Museum is built on looted things. European empires invaded half the planet and took whatever they wanted back home. Their museums are often full of such stolen artifacts, and unfortunately, they refuse to give most of them back. For example, the Rosetta Stone. It was taken from Egypt by Napoleon's army, then stolen again by the British after they beat the French. Egypt has been demanding to return for years, but they still can't get it back. Or the Parthenon marbles. These magnificent massive Greek structures were taken from the Parthenon in Athens by a British lord in the 19th century. Greece has been begging for them back ever since, but the UK doesn't feel like it. Not to mention tons of Mesoamerican artifacts scattered in various museums across the world. European explorers raided Mayan and Aztec temples, took statues, jewelry, and sacred objects, and now Mexico is fighting to get them back. Well, wouldn't it be surprising even if this mysterious underground chamber has somehow been looted already? But if it's a newly found place, could it be one of the few that escaped the hands of grave robbers? Could there still be ancient artifacts, untouched for 4,500 years? We can only hope that those guys didn't get there first.
Egyptologists have been digging around every inch of the Great Pyramid for ages. Yet somehow, they overlooked this stunning pink granite bathtub buried a few miles next to it. And here's the deal. This mysterious oval tube lying next to the Khufu pyramid for years may provide evidence that the Egyptians built the pyramids not only for monumental purposes, but also to generate electricity, experimenting with it long before Alessandro Volta and Thomas Edison. The Giza Plateau is famous for its three pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. But there are also two smaller foundations next to them, the unfinished North Pyramid of Zayet El Aryan and the Layer Pyramid. Some researchers say these buildings were never finished, while others think they were destroyed for more mysterious reasons. One of these reasons might have to do with the original usage of the Giza pyramids, the idea that they were used as an electricity generator. To connect these dots, we need to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. That's when an Italian architect and Egyptologist named Alessandro Barsanti decided to examine the Zayet El Aryan pyramid. Near the site, he noticed something unusual: scattered granite fragments. To a casual passerby, these might have seemed insignificant, but Barsanti recognized the signs. You see, ancient Egyptians often used sites to prepare stones before transporting them to their final destinations. The fact that there was granite on the ground intrigued him. Granite was a more expensive material than the limestone typically used for pyramids, which suggested that it might have been intended for an important and possibly hidden structure. At a depth of 68 feet, they encountered a huge pink granite block. He kept going with the excavations, and they revealed ancient inscriptions carved into the stones. They sent the drawing to experts, but no one could decipher what they meant. Were they instruction sets to something? That's when Barsanti made his biggest discovery. He found an oval-shaped vat carved from pink granite and polished to a mirror-like finish. The thing is, the vat had been carefully sealed. When they opened it, they found a thin black residue along the walls. I'm thinking something in the lines of a black oily substance. This discovery raised many questions for him. It didn't make sense to him that ancient Egyptians would go above and beyond to seal and protect this strange vat. By 1911, Barsanti had to abandon his effort to figure out what was the deal with that mysterious pit. But his findings intrigued researchers all over the world, and they've got their own opinions about it. One of these modern theories suggests that the other pyramids could have been used as a part of a bigger whole. It suggests that the Khufu pyramid was actually used as a water pump designed to irrigate the desert area. Apparently, the pyramid's internal chambers would function as a hydraulic system. In the 1990s, an engineer took this theory seriously and studied the pyramid's subterranean chamber. Surprisingly, he found actual signs of water damage. Apparently, the pyramid generated powerful compression waves, aka pulses, that could create electricity. This raised an important question. Could the ancient Egyptians have used the pyramids as a generator in order to produce electricity? On paper, that was proven to be possible, but hey, agreeing on the original use of the pyramids is probably one of the most difficult things in the world. So, we're still not 100% sure about this. Apart from that, Egypt is a playground for important discoveries regarding humanity's past. I mean, scientists have just discovered what looks like a cosmic command center, similar to that room from the Doctor Strange movies. They discovered an L-shaped astronomical observatory, measuring around 9,000 square feet, dating back to the 6th century BCE. Definitely the first and largest of its kind from that era. The mud brick structure housed tools used for calculating dates related to ancient Egyptian rites, royal coronations, and agricultural plans. This observatory is located in the archaeological site known as the Temple of Phuto, just 50 miles east of Alexandria. It's pretty impressive. The structure was designed so that you'd get inside the room through an east-facing entrance. This way, you'd get to see the sunrise. Once inside, you'd find a pretty huge shadow clock, used to tell time by tracking the movement of shadows inside the room. This variant of a sundial clock was nearly 16 feet long. That was quite an exciting discovery. Another interesting one was that scientists and Egyptologists have discovered the first ever pregnant mummy. Now, even if we know quite a lot about mummification processes, we keep making discoveries that open new doors into the lives of ancient Egyptians. It took so long for someone to find out this mummy was expecting at the time she was embalmed because she was placed in a male's coffin. More specifically, a male priest. Historians say that during the 19th century, a lot of traders mixed coffins up in order to sell them. Yes, that means they opened them and switched mummies to please their buyers. It was a complete surprise because they were hoping to study more about ancient health issues when they opened this coffin up. But they had another special research on their hands: prenatal practices in ancient Egypt. This mummified woman, who lived about 2,000 years ago, was from 20 to 30 years old when she passed away. She was found in Thebes, and her remains were incredibly well preserved. You see, mummification recipes varied across Egypt. In this woman's case, researchers could tell she was a member of the high society since she was buried with special amulets. But since mummification methodologies differed so much between cities and time periods, they still have to dig further to understand why she was embalmed along with her baby. Speaking of mummies, scientists were digging up a final resting place in Saqqara, also in Egypt, and they unearthed 2 embalming workshops. One was for humans and the other for sacred animals. Apparently, the workshops date back to about 2,400 years ago. They were equipped with stone beds, clay pots, and ritual vessels. Everything you needed to mummify. But that's not all. Archaeologists also stumbled upon cheese stored in jars behind tombs that were over 3,000 years old. Yep, cheese. This shows that the ancient Egyptians were pretty savvy when it came to preserving food, too. They knew how to store stuff for the long haul, not just the mummies. It really shows how they applied their preservation skills to both food and bodies, giving us a glimpse into their impressive technological know-how. Scientists have also found one of Egypt's oldest complete mummies, and to their surprise, it was completely covered in gold. You see, Egyptian mummies covered in gold are already a rare thing, but they weren't expecting it to be the oldest one ever found. The mummy was quite well preserved, and they could identify that it was the remains of a wealthy man, called Hekashepes. Many symbols show that he was important and wealthy. like the band he wore on his head and the bracelet on his chest. He was also dressed in a tunic wrapped with a belt, which was a way to preserve the good appearance of a person after they passed away. To reveal it, they had to open the final resting place with mortar. Basically, it was like they were opening a time machine, just as the ancient Egyptians did 4,300 years ago. If you think about it, it's almost like entering a time capsule. Enough about mummies. Scientists also found something very exciting hovering above the pyramids. They had to use a fancy top-notch radar known as LARID, aka Low Altitude Long Range Ionospheric Radar, which can see these invisible waves far away into the sky. LARID helped them discover giant plasma bubbles floating in the air above the pyramids. These bubbles are called plasma bubbles, and they wreak havoc on modern technologies. I mean, they can disrupt GPS and phone signals for hundreds of kilometers in diameter from where they're located. These bubbles are massive, sometimes as big as cities, and they're caused by the sudden depletion of charged particles in the ionosphere. So, instead of spreading out evenly throughout the ionosphere, they stick together in this wave-like form. This was a pretty important discovery because it can help scientists understand how to prevent these waves from messing with our technology.
Archaeologists were looking for the long-lost tomb of Cleopatra when they found something that seemed too good to be real. Roughly 43 feet underground beneath a ruined Egyptian temple, there was a perfectly straight tunnel, carved through solid sandstone. The tunnel is over 4,200 feet long, and so precise that experts called it a geometric miracle. The tunnel sits beneath an ancient city west of Alexandria, near Egypt's Mediterranean coast. The team that found it carefully peeled back layers of stone and debris until they hit this passage, about 6.5 feet tall, cut cleanly into bedrock. There were no collapse marks or wandering curves, just precision. If you've ever tried to drill a straight hole into a wall at home and failed within seconds, imagine doing this underground for nearly a mile. Ancient builders had no GPS, no lasers, no modern surveying tools. Yet, this tunnel stays remarkably level over its entire length. That means they understood gradients, angles, and distance in a way that goes far beyond stack stones and hope. Engineers today rely on machines to maintain that kind of accuracy underground. These people relied on knowledge, repetition, and patience. Parts of the tunnel now sit underwater or collapsed, probably after several earthquakes that struck the region centuries ago. Some experts think the tunnel may have once connected the temple to water sources or ritual areas closer to the sea. Archaeologists noticed that the Egyptian tunnel is an exact replica of the Eupalinos tunnel in Greece. It's believed to be one of the most important engineering achievements of antiquity, which only makes the Egyptian tunnel more special. Underground passages in ancient Greece linked temples to sacred springs. Back in ancient times, people moved through space in specific ways, underground and above, to reenact myths and journeys of gods. A tunnel like this could represent a path to the underworld, rebirth, or divine transition. Nobody would invest this much effort in construction just for decoration. Plus, in earlier digs at the site, archaeologists pulled up all kinds of artifacts, including coins with the names and faces of Cleopatra VII and Alexander the Great. They also found figurines, statues of deities, a mummy with a gold tongue, and even an entire cemetery packed with Greco-Roman style mummies. The perfect geometric tunnel isn't an isolated flex. Not far away, underwater archaeologists off the coast of Alexandria uncovered something that sounds like it belongs in a royal travel documentary. A 2,000-year-old pleasure boat that once glided along the Nile. And this wasn't just another fishing vessel or cargo barge. It likely stretched over 115 feet long and 23 feet wide, and had a decorated cabin, plus around 20 rowers, which turned the river into a moving palace. This isn't speculation pulled out of thin air. An ancient Greek geographer named Strabo wrote about these exact boats around the 1st century BCE. He described lavish vessels used by royalty during festivals and ceremonial outings in Alexandria. For years, historians treated that as a poetic exaggeration. Then, this wreck surfaced, and suddenly, Strabo sounded less like a storyteller and more like a witness. Even ancient art backs it up. The Palestrina mosaic from Italy shows richly decorated boats floating down the Nile. They match both the texts and the physical evidence almost perfectly. Inside the wreck, archaeologists found something small but incredibly human. Graffiti scratched into the wood in Greek. Just writing left behind by someone who stood on that deck 2,000 years ago. Researchers haven't fully decoded the text yet, but its existence alone matters. It tells us this wasn't just a floating symbol of power. People lived on it. It was sort of like a modern luxurious yacht, and the Nile was like a highway. All types of vessels with passengers were moving back and forth, visiting friends, carrying their goods for trade, doing business, and, of course, going on pleasure cruises. The location of the pleasure boat makes the story even better. The boat sat near the temple of Isis on Antirodos, an island that once hosted royal and religious buildings before earthquakes and rising seas erased it from the surface. That temple collapsed around 50 CE, and researchers believe the boat may have sunk during the same disaster. Another recent find that has to do with life on the Nile is the lower part of the massive worship complex about 10 miles southwest of Cairo. It connects directly to an upper temple dedicated to Ra, the Egyptian deity of the sun. The newly excavated part is a 4,500-year-old valley temple. The upper temple sits on higher ground, and archaeologists excavated it years ago. The valley temple is closer to the Nile, and it's connected to the upper part by a causeway. A German Egyptologist actually started excavating part of the temple back in 1901, but the groundwater sat much higher then, and he had to stop. Now, the groundwater level is lower, and a modern team has managed to excavate about half of the Valley Temple since 2024. Once they got in, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a columned entrance portico. Then they found blocks carved with a calendar of religious events, almost like an ancient public schedule. The text includes feasts for Sokar, a falcon-headed deity linked to Memphis, which was a major capital during the Old Kingdom, plus the festival of Min, a fertility deity, and even the procession of Ra. The calendar blocks all showed up around the entrance portico area, which most definitely means that the outside facade of the temple displayed this long feast calendar publicly. That's why archaeologists think this might be one of the earliest examples of a true public calendar ever found. A literal event list for an entire community, built into the architecture. On top of that, the team found dozens of decorated blocks covered in inscriptions that named a pharaoh who ruled around 2420 to 2389 BCE and had the temple built. This temple shows how people moved through ancient Egypt. Because the upper temple handled the main worship, but the valley temple made the whole place accessible. It acted like the landing area for boats coming in, either directly from the Nile or more likely from one of its side channels. So instead of hiking across desert terrain, visitors could arrive by water, step onto the temple's landing stage, enter through the Valley Temple, then head up the causeway ramp toward the upper temple on the hill. After about a century of use, researchers found that the Valley Temple had been repurposed into a residential area. And the best part is, what they found from that era: 2 wooden pieces used for playing Senet, an ancient board game. Senet shows up at other Egyptian sites too, including King Tutankhamun's tomb, but nobody fully agrees on the rules today. Some discoveries in Egypt create new mysteries instead of solving the old ones. Earlier in 2025, archaeologists announced the discovery of the first pharaoh's burial found in or near the Valley of Kings since King Tut's tomb in 1922. The newly found tomb of Thutmose II flooded almost immediately after burial. Ancient officials rushed in, removed the mummy and most of the grave goods, and hid them somewhere else. The weirdest part is that an alabaster ointment jar inside the tomb links the burial directly to Hatshepsut, Thutmose II's wife and half-sister. The inscription basically says she made this monument for him, which proves she arranged his burial. But it still doesn't explain why she placed him here and later chose the Valley of the Kings for herself. Now, archaeologists are studying a huge mound of rubble near the tomb, about 75 feet tall, and suspect it was built to hide something important. If a second tomb sits underneath, it could be complete and undisturbed. So, the deeper the archaeologists dig, the more ancient Egypt stops feeling like a gone civilization and starts feeling like a paused one. Looks like it didn't just survive time, it outsmarted it. And we're only just beginning to catch up.
Beneath the sands of Luxor, scientists found something that was perhaps never meant to be found. Over 1,000 decorated stone blocks that belonged to the ruined temple of a woman pharaoh. It got us thinking, why was this temple so brutally destroyed, and who was this woman? Her name is Hatshepsut, and she is now considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, but for a long time, history almost forgot her. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, from around 1479 to 1458 BCE. She's remembered for her ambitious building projects, successful military campaigns, and flourishing trade expeditions. It turns out she was one out of 4 women to take the title of pharaoh in Egyptian history. The next woman would have to wait for 1,500 years to reign, and that woman we know as Cleopatra. The story of how Hatshepsut got to be a pharaoh is the most colorful part of this tale. As far as most dynastic rules go, it's usually men that are first in line for royal thrones. In Egypt, that was the same. That's why, when Pharaoh Thutmose I had a daughter as his firstborn, that was a big no-no as far as his succession line went. A few years later, Pharaoh Thutmose I passes away. The crown passed to Thutmose II, who ruled briefly, only to leave the throne to his infant son, Thutmose III. In this scenario, Hatshepsut was this pharaoh's stepmother. So what happened was that Hatshepsut served as advisor to her stepson, since he was too young to rule on his own. But after 7 years, she made an unprecedented move. She decided to seize power and declared herself Pharaoh of Egypt. Now this was not a simple power grab. Hatshepsut understood that if she wanted to rule, she had to present herself as a legitimate king. In a bold move, she adopted the full royal regalia, including the false beard, traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She was often depicted in statues and hieroglyphs as a man, wearing the pharaoh's kilt and headdress. But this wasn't about disguising herself. Experts believe she never tried to hide her identity. Inscriptions on her statues often included feminine titles, like Daughter of Re, or grammatical structures that combined male and female terms, such as His Majesty herself. This showed that while she adopted traditional symbols of kings, she still acknowledged her true gender. But she needed to go even further. To legitimize her rule, she crafted an elaborate origin story. She claimed that the deity Amun himself had visited her mother in the form of her father, Thutmose I, and that she was his divine daughter. Now this was no small claim, since pharaohs were seen as deities on earth. By aligning herself with Amun, she strengthened her right to the throne. In temple carvings, she depicted this divine birth with Amun, presenting her as his rightful heir. These narratives weren't just mythology, they were tools, ensuring her position remained unchallenged. Hatshepsut also took a new name, Ma'at Kari, which translates roughly to "Truth is the soul of the sun god." The word Ma'at was central to Egyptian beliefs. It represented order, justice, and divine balance. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at to ensure Egypt's stability. By calling herself Ma'at Kari, Hatshepsut was likely reinforcing that she was a legitimate and rightful ruler. Her reign was truly great. She led Egypt into an era of peace and prosperity, launching massive building projects and restoring temples across the kingdom. Her most famous achievement was the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari, a pretty impressive architectural masterpiece carved into the cliffs of Luxor. Hatshepsut initiated one of the most ambitious construction projects in ancient Egyptian history, commissioning monuments, temples, and obelisks to immortalize her reign. It's argued that she continued with the construction of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a grand road lined with statues leading to the Karnak Temple. For many, her shining architectural achievement was the towering obelisk she had carved from single pieces of granite. One of these, weighing over 320 tons, still stands today. Now, beyond building, she expanded Egypt's influence through trade. She sent an expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, bringing back riches like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Her fleet of ships sailing the Red Sea marked the first recorded trade mission of its kind, establishing economic ties that would benefit Egypt for generations. Yet, for all of her success, something strange happened after Hatshepsut passed away. Her successor, aka her stepson Thutmose III, who had been overshadowed by her rule, took a drastic step. He ordered her name to be erased from history. Her statues were defaced, her inscriptions chiseled away, and her achievements credited to other rulers. It was as if she had never existed. Some believe Thutmose III wanted to reclaim his rightful place as pharaoh, while others suggest that later rulers, uncomfortable with the idea of a female pharaoh, sought to restore traditional male dominance. The story gets even more tragic. The power struggle between stepmother and stepson continues, since, even after her passing away, Thutmose III built his own temple right next to Hatshepsut's at the Valley of the Kings. But he built his temple with one deliberate modification. His monument was built 11 feet higher than hers. Mind you that this was no accident, it was a symbolic statement. He wanted to overshadow her legacy. But history had other plans. Hatshepsut's legacy started to be rediscovered in the 19th century, and it was only through careful archaeological investigation that her reign was properly recognized. Today, Hatshepsut is remembered as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Her reign, once erased, has been reconstructed through constant archaeological discoveries, proving that her power and influence could not be so easily forgotten. Her resting place had been hidden in plain sight, her body removed from its original chamber in an effort to erase her from history. This final piece of evidence cemented her legacy, proving that even attempts to erase a pharaoh could not really do it. Hatshepsut's grand temple, Djeser-Djeseru, was a stunning architectural feat, designed to immortalize her reign and solidify her divine connection to Amun. But after her death, her successor, Thutmose III, launched that calculated effort to erase her legacy, and parts of her temple were dismantled. Historians still debate why. Was it a dynastic power move, an attempt to restore traditional male rule, or a bid to strengthen Thutmose III's claim to the throne? Maybe he was just a jerk. Whatever the reason, the destruction wasn't immediate. It happened decades after her death, suggesting it might not have been a personal revenge, but a broader political strategy. Yet, despite these efforts, her temple endures, and so does her story, a defiant echo of Egypt's first great female pharaoh. Let's travel through space and time to another place. Dashur, Egypt, is known to be home to several resting places of people from ancient Egypt. In the year 2017, scientists uncovered a long-lost pyramid. They quickly called the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities because they suspected it was going to be a big deal. Unlike most pyramids that were found in the area, this one was completely sealed. Lifting the capstone was a delicate process. When they finally managed to open the pyramid, they expected to find an undisturbed chamber. Instead, it was chaos. The place had been looted, and the personal items of the person that had passed away were scattered all over. But in the middle of the wreckage, they found a chest. Using the latest scanning technology, they managed to read the damaged hieroglyphs on its surface. What they found was unbelievable. The name inscribed there was as clear as day: Princess Hatshepsut. Ooh. The discovery made in 2017 also opened up a lot of questions. After further analysis, scientists discovered the remains belonged to another Hatshepsut. It belonged to a princess that lived during Egypt's 13th dynasty. The fact that her resting place had been looted before it was sealed made scientists wonder, were these ancient people trying to hide something about this public figure? And why is there almost no record about her in ancient Egyptian history? Ooh, stay tuned.
2 centuries ago, a 31-year-old Frenchman stormed into his brother's office in Paris. He had only one thing to share. "I've got it!" The man was so excited that he immediately collapsed. He spent the next 5 days in bed recovering his health. Who was this mysterious person, and why was he so thrilled? Jean-François Champollion made one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs in human history. He had cracked the code of Egyptian hieroglyphs. This enabled scientists to finally unravel the secrets of this ancient civilization. They weren't able to read hieroglyphs for nearly 2,000 years. After the Romans took over Egypt, the intricate writing system slowly faded away from people's minds. The last of the hieroglyphic texts date back to the 4th century. For thousands of years, Egyptians used images to show their lives. But the knowledge of how to read these pictures was lost to modern science. The story of hieroglyphs began in 3250 before current era. That's when ancient Egyptians developed writing. Their motivation was to better organize the distribution and storage of goods. One of the earliest examples is a ceramic jar that had an inscription in black ink. There were 2 major writing systems. The first were the hieroglyphs, which literally means sacred carving. Egyptians carved hieroglyphs in stone on temples, tombs, and similar monuments for 3,000 years. They present a system of pictorial texts. A pictograph is a picture or a drawing that stands for an idea of a word. It's a precursor to the true writing as we have it today. For example, when Egyptians wanted to write ibis, they would draw a small image of the bird. Hieroglyphs can be found on walls. They were a formal way of writing. The other writing system was hieratic. Egyptians mostly used it when writing on papyrus. That's an early, thicker form of the paper we have today. It soon evolved into Demotic. This improved version became the most common writing systems in ancient Egypt. Then, in the early 4th century BCE, Alexander the Great took control of Egypt. This was the time when the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty ruled the country. You've probably heard of the last ruler of this dynasty, Cleopatra. During her time, Egyptian Demotic and Greek were used side by side. The two started mixing, and by the year 100, a new language emerged, Coptic. It slowly replaced the ancient writing system. Only Egyptian priests used hieroglyphs for the next couple of centuries, and then their meaning was lost to history. But not forever. Arabs were the first who tried to solve the mystery of the hieroglyphs. Medieval travelers came across these strange symbols and wanted to understand their meaning. They consulted speakers of Coptic and translated text from Greek and Latin into Arabic to break the code of the hieroglyphs. During the Renaissance, Europeans also became fascinated with the legacy of ancient Egypt. Scholars from the Old Continent believed that hieroglyphs were a group of symbols as opposed to a written language. This was all about to change in 1799. A year earlier, Napoleon, the famous French ruler, arrived in Egypt. His subordinates constructed a fort that dated back to the 15th century. Rashid, or Rosetta, was a port town in the northeast of Egypt, near Alexandria. One section of the old fortification wall contained an interesting slab inside. The stone tablet was made of a granite-like rock. It was just 40 inches high and 30 inches wide. It contained 3 distinctive sections of text carved into it. The letters were in 3 scripts and 2 languages: hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Greek. It was a fragment of a larger ancient stela. These are upright stone slabs that are used to dedicate to a person or an event, but the one from Rosetta was damaged. 2/3 of the hieroglyphic text on the top was missing. The bottom Greek text lacked a cornerstone. The only fully preserved section was the writing in Demotic in the middle of the slab. It eventually ended up in the British Museum. The scientific community was intrigued, and the race was on to decipher it. Prints and casts of the slab went out all over Europe. Scholars already knew ancient Greek, so in theory, this shouldn't have been so hard. The first people who saw the Rosetta Stone thought the process would take 2 weeks. In the end, it took 2 decades. The main issue was the fact that hieroglyphs and spoken ancient Egyptian didn't have a connection anymore. Scientists didn't know what sounds the letters on the slab corresponded to. Imagine if English disappeared 1,000 years in the future. Then someone finds a tablet with the word dog. At first, they wouldn't know how to read the word or the individual letters. Even if they figured out how to pronounce the word, they wouldn't know its meaning. This is what linguists were dealing with in the case of the Rosetta Stone. The careful study of the artifact produced another find. The texts weren't direct translations of each other. They both described the same event, but in different words. It was like you saw a movie with 2 friends, and then all 3 of you wrote different reviews about it. The original text was probably in Greek, but the translators added extra words to make it sound more Egyptian. An English physician and physicist, Thomas Young, made the first great breakthrough. He knew that the name Ptolemy appeared several times in the text based on the Greek translation. This wasn't an Egyptian name, so it was impossible to represent it with a single image. The only way to spell out this Greek name was to use symbols that sound like it when produced. This is called transliteration, and we have it today as well. This is how foreign-sounding words are written down in Chinese or some Slavic languages. Young focused on sets of hieroglyphs in oval frames. These are called cartouches. He experimented a bit but finally discovered that one of them read, Ptolemy the Great. The individual hieroglyphs that made up this name corresponded to sounds needed to produce it. This is where our mysterious man from the beginning of the video enters the picture. Champollion picked up where Young left off. He knew Coptic, so the Frenchman was able to determine what many other hieroglyphs sounded like. The eureka moment was close. It came while he was studying a cartouche from a site dedicated to Ramses II. It had 4 symbols. The last 2 were the same. He determined this was the sound S. The first symbol was the sun. This is Ra or Re in Coptic. So the cartouche read Ra something SS. Can you already guess the name? Of course, it's Ramses. This breakthrough finally cracked the code. Ancient Egyptian wasn't a mishmash of cool-looking images. It was a phonetic language that Jean-François Champollion discovered in September of 1822. The stone slab is today known as the Decree of Memphis. The Egyptian Council issued it in this city in the year 196 before current era. In it, they expressed their loyalty to the pharaoh. They erected identical stelae in temples all across Egypt. The Rosetta Stone was just one copy of them, but its content is less important than the fact that Champollion's translation gave these ancient peoples their voice again. During the 1800s, European scholars didn't think that the Egyptian civilization was much older than classical Greek or Roman. Now that scientists could read hieroglyphs, a whole new chapter of human history opened. One of the most famous finds in the history of archaeology happened in 1922. That's when the British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in Egypt's Valley of the Kings. The whole world admired King Tut's golden mask. But without Champollion's pioneering work, it would be impossible to know who its owner was. The young pharaoh's cartouche is phonetic. For instance, you pronounce the pictograph of a chick as the vowel U. The symbol for the key of life is an ankh, and there is a shepherd's crook in the end. It symbolizes the word ruler.
Secant, cosine, tangent, sine, 3.14159. Yeah, That was the cheer we heard coming from the trigonometry club back in the day. For the rest of us in math class, terms such as sine, tangent, and pi were just bewildering. Who invented these and why? Was their only purpose to make it harder for students? Well, not quite. Trigonometry was invented by the ancient Egyptians. They needed this knowledge to construct pyramids, and they did a pretty good job too. The Great Pyramid in Giza still stands today, some 4,500 years after it was built. No recalls either. So let's get out of that classroom and on a journey through time to reveal the secrets behind the ancient Egyptians' precision. Here you are, standing on the Great Pyramid's construction site, some 9 miles from Cairo. Well, the city still isn't there, as you're surrounded only by the desert and teams of construction workers. They're transporting large stone blocks weighing 2.5 tons each. They're inside a wooden sled that sits on large rollers. A crew of 8 men rolls these blocks along the ground. You immediately think of the rollers on a supermarket cash register. The principle is exactly the same, but the scale is greater, much greater. Scientists estimate that the Egyptians used 2.3 million such blocks in the Great Pyramid alone. And the block in front of you is one of the lighter ones. The heaviest of them weighed up to 15 tons. But where did all these blocks come from? Most of them originated from quarries around Giza. It's not that impressive, you think, but wait until you hear how ancient engineers transported the granite used in construction over 500 miles to the pyramid. There were no railways or highways back then, but the mighty Nile was always there. Researchers even believe that the Egyptians dug a canal to connect the Nile directly to the pyramid's construction site. All they had to do then was to wait for the flood season to begin, and voila! The rising water levels floated the heavy stone blocks for them. But how did they lift the enormous stones on dry land to stack them up to the top? Did they use oversized cranes? Well, ancient Egyptians worked around this problem, literally speaking. One of the workers is now pointing to the giant ramp going around the pyramid they're building. This is how a mountain road zigzags its way to the top. If the ramp went directly to the top of the pyramid, then workers couldn't pull the stone blocks along it. It would be too steep. Scientists have calculated that 8% could be the maximum incline. So ancient Egyptians just extended the ramp around the pyramid. Again, these are all theories, as the ramp could have been inside the pyramid, as some researchers suggest. The exact building method is still a mystery, guarded by the Sphinx. That's its real name, right? Wrong. As the Great Sphinx is just the statue's alias. You know, the name writers take when they want to hide their true identity, or a singer's stage name. The Sphinx's real name, translated from Egyptian, means Horus in the horizon. That was the name for the Egyptian deity of the sky. The trail of mystery doesn't end there, as a man walks past you with a bucket of paint. He's going to add a touch of color to the Great Sphinx. Researchers found specks of this red color next to its ear. That was some strong paint, as it survived for thousands of years. You are now standing straight in front of the Sphinx. You look up. It's very tall, right? 66 feet to be precise. Now resist the urge to take a selfie. You can do it. Now you notice something else. It looks like the Sphinx is in the center of a giant triangle in the back. That's one side of the Great Pyramid. And no, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. The Sphinx really does sit in the center of the pyramid's lateral face. Here's where math comes in handy. A pyramid has 4 sides, called lateral faces. There's also a 5th face, the base, but that's not visible. It's, wait for it, face down. The Sphinx has one last mystery to reveal: its age. Scientists agree that Pharaoh Khafre built the Sphinx. He ruled after his father, who had built a Great Pyramid nearby. So both structures were finished around the same time. Let's talk about numbers again. You've heard of Cleopatra, the Egyptian princess described as a woman of great beauty.
Hello?
She saw the pyramids, but she lived closer to the time of the first iPhone than the time of the people who built the pyramids. Fascinating, right? You can see thousands of people around you. They're working hard to build the pharaoh's tomb. But how many of them are there exactly? One Greek philosopher estimated there were as many as 100,000 workers. Seems like an okay number for such an enormous structure, but it can't be true. Science simply can't back up this number. Egyptologists put the total number of workers at 30,000. And yes, Indiana Jones was one of them, at least on the big screen, but he showed up late. Egyptologists know a lot about the pyramids, but not everything. Not because they don't want to, but because they haven't yet dug up enough evidence. They can only guess how the building process went. First, engineers would arrive to choose the right spot and do the necessary measurements. That's why they needed all that complicated math. Then, it's time for sourcing the material, the large stone blocks I mentioned earlier. When boats deliver them to the site of the future pyramid, workers can finally do their thing. They operated in smaller groups, but there were at least 2,000 of them chiseling and carving away at any given time. Sounds like a typical construction site today? Well, that's because it is, just thousands of years ago. It's amazing what ancient Egyptians were able to achieve with just copper and stone tools. The pyramid is now complete in front of you. But is it the same pyramid we see today? Why is this structure shining bright in the desert sun? Isn't it supposed to be a dusty yellow color? Well, no. Human activity and the elements have completely stripped the outer layer of stones over time. Expert craftspeople polished these blocks using nothing but stone and sand. The end result was a smooth and shiny rock. On the day it was completed, the Great Pyramid of Giza was a perfect triangle of light. Its polished sides acted like giant mirrors, reflecting the powerful Egyptian sun. This is the point where you should put your glasses on, and that shiny thing you see at the pyramid's very top is actually gold. The capstone at the top of the pyramid is called a pyramidion. It was covered in sheets of gold. As you can guess, these were the first stones to disappear. Let's make another stop before we get you back to your classroom. We travel to the British Isles, and no, Stonehenge isn't our destination. It is Newgrange in County Meath. Scientists estimate that the ancient peoples of Ireland built this stone monument around the year 3200 BCE. This makes it older than both Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid in Giza. The function of the circular mound in Newgrange is the same as the one of the Great Pyramid and equally mysterious. The estimated amount of loose stone present in the valley is over 220,000 tons. And it's not just randomly thrown on a pile. The order in which the stones are set makes the structure water-resistant. That would explain how Newgrange had survived for so long. Kinda makes you want to splash out the cash for that waterproof phone case, huh? Well, you're back in your school desk, but today's math lecture is the last thing on your mind. You're thinking about how great the Egyptian pyramids are, and if we have something similar today. It turns out modern engineers are just as impressed with the Great Pyramid as you are. There's a glass pyramid sitting in the main courtyard of the famous Louvre Museum in Paris. The panorama of San Francisco wouldn't be complete without the 48-story Transamerica Pyramid. But Las Vegas went the furthest. There we find the Luxor Hotel. It's so big that it's the third largest pyramid on the planet. And guess what's in front of it? Yup, a replica of the Sphinx. It's 110 feet tall, 2 stories higher than the one in Giza. Yeah, everything's bigger in Vegas. There's a place on Earth that looks like it came straight out of the movie Dune. Massive platforms of stone and mud rise in the middle of a scorching desert. And somehow, people manage to survive in such a hostile environment.
Oh, really?
But unlike the movie, this real city in Peru was abandoned over 3,000 years ago and has stayed hidden from us until now. Meet Pañeco. This lost city is located in the Huaura province, north of Lima. After 8 years of excavation and conservation work, some of its secrets have finally been brought to light. It may look eerie and lifeless now, but it wasn't always this way. Experts think this place used to be a busy trading center for ancient Peruvians. In fact, it was part of the oldest known civilization in the Americas, at least as far as we know. And no, they weren't the Mayas or the Aztecs. That's a common mistake. I'm talking about the Corral Supe civilization. This society existed more than 5,000 years ago. That's super old. To put that in perspective, while the Sumerians in Mesopotamia were reaching their peak, and the Egyptians were just starting to build things in Giza, the people in Corral were already building pyramids. Thanks to them, Peru is now seen as one of the 6 places where civilization first began. But unlike the objects we find from ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, you won't see Corral artifacts in museums, at least not fancy vases covered in mysterious letters, since they didn't know pottery or writing. What they did know was how to build big. They left behind mind-blowing architecture, such as stepped pyramids and huge sunken plazas, like massive open-air arenas big enough to hold hundreds of people. And it's not like they just had one pyramid here and a plaza there. No, as I said, they built big. So far, researchers have found as many as 30 major metropolitan centers across what we now call the Corral region or Peru's north-central coast. You can think of them as full-on cities, with residential areas, several plazas, and ceremonial temples. Their largest pyramid, known as Piramide Mayor, stands nearly 100 feet tall, with a base covering an area the size of about 4 football fields. That's substantial.
Oh my God!
And building all that surely wasn't easy. It took planning, coordination, and specialists. That suggests that Corral must have had organized labor and strong leadership to pull it off. Despite creating these incredible constructions, Corral cities stayed hidden for thousands of years. And even when researchers first came across the area, it took decades for them to realize how important it really was. They already knew about the ruins back in the 1940s, but it wasn't until the 90s that the first major study of Corral was done. And there's a reason they were ignored for so long. The architecture was so advanced and the proportions so huge that people thought, nah, this has to be something modern. They couldn't have been more wrong, though. And in 2001, studies finally recognized that Corral was the oldest known civilization in the Americas. Archaeologists believe this society existed from around 3,000 to 1,800 years before the Common Era. And for 4,000 years, they flourished in complete isolation. Chances are they never met another civilization at all. This may explain why they are considered such a peaceful society. Researchers haven't found any signs of conflict. No fortifications, no battle gear, no trace of fighting. Instead, they seem more focused on commerce and, well, pleasure. Looks like they love music. In one of the temples, for example, archaeologists found 32 flutes made from bird bones. I wonder what that sounded like. Anyway, the Corral lived along 3 rivers, the Fortaleza, the Patavilca, and the Supe. Just like the newly discovered city of Peñeco, this lost city was built on a natural terrace about 1,970 feet above sea level. And no, they didn't do that for the view, it was for security. Building higher up protected them from flooding, since the site sits parallel to the Supe River. Just recently, after 8 years of excavation, experts finally uncovered its beauty. Altogether, they found 18 structures, including temples, residential complexes, and a huge circular plaza. There are also ceremonial halls built on top of large step platforms, along with stairways, courtyards, and carefully designed walls. These structures serve both practical and symbolic purposes. I mean, this was their hotspot, the place where people came together for rituals. Inside one of the structures, researchers uncovered remarkable finds, like sculptures molded in raw clay that portray human figures, animals, and ceremonial objects. They also dug up stone tools, such as grinders, crushers, and hammers. And remember I said they like music, right? Well, the team also found patutus there. That's like an old-school trumpet made of giant shells brought from the Pacific Ocean. Now, if you look at the map, one thing stands out. Peñeco is farther inland than other Corral cities we've discovered. And that's important. The city's location was completely strategic. And that's why it earned the nickname City of Social Integration. There's this theory that says Peñeco played a key role in trading hematite, a mineral used since ancient times to make red pigment. Back then, this was fancy stuff. Piñeco likely served as a hub linking the coastal and highland villages of Supe and Waura. Maybe they traded hematite for fish and shellfish from the coastal villagers. But now comes the big question. What happened to the people who lived there? Why was Piñeco completely abandoned after thousands of years? Well, that still remains a mystery. There are different theories about why the Corral Supe civilization disappeared and why their most important cities were left abandoned. One of them is the maritime hypothesis. It suggests that societies first developed along the coast, relying heavily on fishing, and only later moved inland. So, in that view, cities were abandoned as people shifted away from them. But that doesn't fit Piñeco, right? I mean, it's way too far inland to count as a seaside city. So it's hard to say what really happened. If you look at their main city, archaeologists haven't found any solid evidence of one big disaster. No massive earthquake, no huge flood, nothing like that. And the same goes with Piñeco. There's just no sign of a single event that suddenly wiped them out. The likely explanation is a shift in climate. A change in the weather could have caused long droughts that affected local farming. That would have forced people to abandon their cities, like what happened in northern Mesopotamia. Now, can we say that with absolute certainty? Honestly, no. It's much more likely that several distinct factors led to the decline of that society. They might have also faced some internal conflict, issues of leadership or organization, for example. But that's impossible to prove with archaeology alone. Either way, Piñeco is a huge discovery. It gives us new clues to better understand the crisis the Corral civilization faced before its collapse. But for now, many of their secrets are still waiting to be uncovered. And there's still so much for researchers to figure out about how this civilization was born and how it evolved over time. If you want to visit Piñeco, here's some good news. The site has recently been opened to the public. It's about a 4.5-hour drive from Lima, and you can get there either by a private vehicle or through tourist services. Yeah, it's not the easiest journey, but the breathtaking landscapes will make up for it. And if you don't have the time or the money to fly all the way to Peru, don't worry. If you know Spanish, you can explore a virtual museum dedicated to Corral. It features 10 thematic rooms designed to take you on a journey back to the origins of civilization. You'll find photos, videos, infographics. It's a whole immersive experience. Of course, it's not the same as standing on the site itself, but it still offers a fascinating glimpse into the world of the oldest known civilization in the Americas.
You're heading to Spain with a team of archaeologists to try to find some ancient artifacts. You get lucky and uncover one of the greatest treasures of the Iberian Bronze Age. Iberian refers to the Bronze Age culture of Portugal and Spain. So you find and unearth coins, jewelry, vases, vessels, and two pretty strange items. One is something like a part of a scepter, and the other resembles a bracelet. And you know what's strange about them? They're connected with space. In 1963, several miles away from the city of Villena, Spain, scientists discovered the treasure of Villena, one of the most significant gold hoards from the Bronze Age. Interestingly, are there bronze treasures from the Golden Age? Never mind. All the gold found dates back to sometime between 1500 and 1200 BCE, except for that scepter and bracelet. They were made by inhabitants of another planet, so their production date is unknown. Okay, that's a joke. However, a small part of this joke is true. When scientists studied the found gold, they discovered that those two items were made of iron. So what, you might think? Well, the catch is that in the Bronze Age, people didn't mine or manufacture iron. Work with this metal began around 850 BCE, about 400 to 700 years after the creation of the treasure of Villena. How is this possible? A clue to this mystery can be found in ancient Egypt. In the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, an iron dagger was found, which was also made of similar iron. But this dagger was much more valuable than all the others. And that's because it was made from a space object, a meteorite. Yeah, that bracelet and scepter were also made of meteoritic iron. Its difference from Earth metal is that cosmic iron has a high nickel content, so it all makes sense. People from the Bronze Age couldn't mine iron from the deep bowels of our planet, but nothing prevented them from collecting iron falling from the sky. Just imagine how cool it is to have jewelry or a dagger made of material that has traveled millions of years through the vast expanses of space. Perhaps it even contains particles of an ancient extinct star. Today, these two artifacts from the treasure of Vienna are the oldest recorded items in the Iberian Peninsula made of meteoritic iron. Now, with everything in its place, you can turn your attention to all the wealth of the treasure of Vienna. It contains 66 items: bowls, bracelets, bottles, gold jewelry, 3 silver bottles, and an amber gold button. 22 pounds of ancient gold. People hid it, and only after 3,000 years we were able to discover it. This archaeologist's dream can be found in the Vienna Museum, where exhibits from different time periods are presented, from prehistoric times like 50,000 years ago to the present day. Items from the Iberian period, from the Roman period, from the Arab civilization. You can find not only jewelry and coins, but there are also remnants of columns, ceramics, and other architectural artifacts. The collection is considered one of the most important prehistoric treasures of Europe. And the coolest thing is that you can see it all with your own eyes for just €2, which is about $2. Go to Vienna, find the museum, and enjoy. Hey buddy, I heard you have a metal detector. Could you help me find a hammer I left somewhere in the field? Your old farmer friend asks. You take a metal detector and go searching, but instead of a hammer, you find hundreds, even thousands of silver coins worth $2 million. You're so happy that the farmer lost that hammer, and now you're rich. Stop! Considering that this land belongs to the farmer, would you tell him about the find or take it with you? In reality, neither of these options happened. In 1992, Eric Laws was helping a farmer search for a lost hammer in a field near Hoxne, Suffolk, England. The metal detector stumbled upon a hidden treasure, a huge one. There were silver spoons, gold jewelry, more than 500 gold coins, and about 14,000 silver ones. Eric Laws accidentally discovered the largest collection of gold and silver from the late Roman period in Britain. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he and the farmer didn't receive the treasure. It's now in the British Museum. Let's move away from the farmer's field to somewhere on the Mediterranean coast. Imagine you're a scuba diver. There was a strong storm yesterday, but now with the water calm, you dive in and discover the seabed covered with gold dinars. This story happened in 2015. The coins which the storm brought to the shore might have been minted even before the First Crusade that started in 1096. This collection is one of the most impressive archaeological finds in the world. All these treasures surely can make the heads of those who find them spin, but they end up in a museum. And that's a good thing, because such wealth can drive a person crazy. A metal detector and a diving suit helped people discover ancient treasures. What's next? How about a dog? Yes, it could be perhaps a great replacement for a metal detector, by the way. So in 2013, 2 people were walking their dog in Northern California on their property. Suddenly, they discovered a rusty can filled with coins minted from 1847 to 1894. There were about 1,500 coins, and they all were gold. Another chance for a carefree rich future? Not this time. The find caused a lot of controversy among specialists. There was one version, according to which these coins could have been stolen from the US Mint. But later, the US Mint debunked this suggestion as they'd never had this gold in their storage. Anyway, it's interesting what the point was in hiding it all in someone else's yard. Some thief risked their freedom and life to get rich. When they succeeded, they just hid the coins as if they never existed. What a strange deal. Coins, jewelry, meteorite items, it's all cool. But let's end our video with something grand and epic. Archaeologists were conducting research near the Mediterranean coast of Egypt and discovered a treasure trove inside a sunken temple and sanctuary. Despite the waves, earthquakes, and seawater, the massive find was preserved in a not bad condition. The temple was built a very long time ago and collapsed in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. It was an important structure in ancient Egypt. People considered this place holy. Pharaohs came to the temple to seek help from the higher powers of Egyptian mythology to obtain titles for their rule. Titles of kings of the universe. For many people, this place was like the center of the universe, and now it lies forgotten on the seabed, almost ruined. Time spares nothing. Researchers found out the temple had been part of an ancient port city. A long time ago, an earthquake occurred in this area and destroyed the city. Tidal waves softened the ground and dragged the town into the Mediterranean Sea. While studying the temple, scientists found many secret treasures there: silver ceremonial instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster vessels. In past times, people used them to store perfumes or greasy ointments called unguents. Perhaps in ancient Egypt, they weren't bad in the field of cosmetology. Near the temple, archaeologists discovered a Greek sanctuary. Apparently, the Greeks living in Egypt or coming here on business wanted to pay tribute to Aphrodite, so they created a small building in her honor. In that place, archaeologists found bronze and ceramic artifacts from different cultures. Scientists found out that the Greeks had permission to trade in the Egyptian city and even be its residents. It seems pharaohs living around 600 BCE were favorable to the Greeks. The profession of an archaeologist is very exciting. But what would you do if you found some ancient treasure? Before answering this question, find out what law applies to such finds in your country.